of the day, listen, if you love college sports, and I think you probably do if you listen to this show, the never-ending topic of college sports that it just won't die. I, of course, am talking about college realignment, conference realignment, and expansion. Obviously, this all started Texas, Oklahoma to the SEC. From there, there's a trickle-down effect there. The Big Ten makes their new move. The Big 12 makes their move. And as of right now, everyone's waiting on, is the Pac-12 going to make a move? And so we're going to get into it in a minute. But last week, there was a report that the Pac-12 was visiting one school specifically that is not in the Pacific time zone, which is very interesting. But what then happened was that The Athletic did a very good report kind of painting the picture on the present and future of the Pac-12. It's a lot bleaker than I think a lot of people realize. And so the question to me isn't if the Pac-12 is going to expand, it's if the Pac-12 as we know it is going to be able to hold on for dear life. And so let's get into it. Let's get into the details. First of all, I think everybody kind of knows Pac-12 right now is a group of 10 teams that essentially really have nobody but each other, okay? USC and UCLA leave last spring. It was June 30th, I believe, that they announced they were leaving for the Big Ten. All the other schools essentially realized that nobody wants them. Even the Oregons and Washingtons realized the Big Ten is not interested. If they wanted us, they would have reached out to us. And so these schools are trying to figure things out together, all while trying to figure out a TV deal that would also bind them together. As of right now, and this is important, and we're going to get back to it in a minute, the Pac-12, their TV deal expires after the 2023-2024 school year. So essentially, next year we'll have the Pac-12 as we know it. Then USC and UCLA leave, obviously after the spring sports are completed. And as of right now, the Pac-12 does not have a TV deal in place. But while all of this is going on, the Pac-12 is starting to ramp up things in terms of expansion. The big story last week, and I'm sure many of you saw it, I had a few people DM me and ask me, are you going to talk about this? Was that last week, Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff actually kind of got his hand caught in the cookie jar. We found out that he was planning on visiting SMU, and as it turned out, he was in fact seen at SMU, and SMU is seen as a viable candidate for expansion for the Pac-12. Right now, the Pac-12 has 10 teams. We believe, for all intents and purposes, San Diego State, if the Pac-12 expands, San Diego State is a lock. They're in Southern California, brand new football stadium. The basketball arena, the basketball program is rolling. They would step in and automatically be 1A to Arizona's 1 in terms of the two best basketball programs in that league. And so we've known for a while San Diego State is a priority. What we found out last week was that SMU has now become priority number 2. Commissioner was seen there, and the reason the Pac-12 is interested is the obvious, right? It's a smaller school, but it's a very prestigious academic school, actually. The endowment is huge, which sounded weird, but neither here nor there. Boosters are, let's just say, willing to support their athletic programs, especially football. From a recruiting perspective, it would get the conference into Texas. You could go from Dallas all the way to San Diego, all the way north to Seattle, and cover most of the western half of the United States. So that was the report. San Diego State, SMU are the two schools of interest. Those are who the Pac-12 wants. There was just one problem with all of that, though. While that report was going on, The Athletic released a report late last week that painted a pretty bleak picture for where the Pac-12 is right now in terms of their TV negotiations. And again, I know I just said it, but this is really important to explain how we got here and where we are. The Pac-12, the 10 schools remaining, the 2 Oregon schools, Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, Berkeley, and Stanford, that's 6. Arizona State is 7, 8. Colorado, Utah, 9, 10. As of right now, they do not have a TV deal. And so what the Athletic report really peeled back, credit to all of the people there that were working on it, is that the pursuit of the Pac-12's next TV deal from the people that would be interested, it really just isn't there. And so this is what the Athletic reported. This is kind of what you need to know. One part of this is on the Commissioner, George Kliavkoff. last year, whether it was a public kind of a confidence, whatever, he kind of publicly said, we expect to get real money from these TV networks in light of the Big Ten getting their big TV deal. The Big Ten gets a lot of money, and we believe that we are next in line to do so. Well, a couple things happen. One, the Big 12, very smartly, the Big 12 also has a new conference commissioner, Brett Yormark, and we're going to talk about him more in a minute. They rushed their rights to market, okay? So what they did was their contracts weren't up for another year until 2025. They went to their two partners, ESPN and Fox, and said, can we renegotiate on the spot? We know there's no Texas, Oklahoma. We'll take a little bit less or maybe a little bit below market value just to lock in our contract. So now all of a sudden you do some math. Pac-12 already wasn't as valuable as, some of these other conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten most notably. The ACC has their contract locked in forever. And the Big 12 just went to market and sold their deal. And I'm sorry if this is kind of nerdy, but I think it's important to set the tone. So what ends up happening is the market for the Pac-12 really isn't that great. And most of the bidders or would-be bidders, they're kind of already signed up and they have their contracts and they're not looking to add more. So as an example, Fox is set with the Big Ten, with the Big 12 now, and with the Mountain West. Because they have the Mountain West, because they have USC and UCLA, they don't really need a lot of games in that late window. They're kind of already set there. CBS, remember, after this year, they will phase out of the SEC. They will have the Big Ten, and they will also have the Mountain West. NBC, if you remember, will also have the Big Ten, and they will have Notre Dame, and they are not looking to add anything else. And so when you take out Fox and you take out CBS and you take out NBC, not great at, I'm not a media consultant expert here. Not a lot of bidders. ESPN is interested because ESPN wants that late night window filled, that 10:30 Eastern time window, but they know there's no other competition, so they're not going to overpay. And so far, the streaming services, which have invested, Amazon's invested millions, hundreds of millions, billions in the NFL. Apple has invested hundreds of millions in the MLS. The streamers are interested, but they're not willing to go crazy above board either. And so, again, I'm not an economist. I'm not a media consulting expert, but when you don't have a lot of bidders and the bidders that you do have are not willing to overpay, it's going to be hard to close a deal. And all of this is happening, and I think this is the interesting part. All of this is happening while the Big 12 is being very aggressive. So keep in mind, the Pac-12, none of these schools are committed to anybody beyond next spring of 2024. So about 14, 15 months from now. All of this is going on while the Big 12 is very aggressive. The Big 12, under their new commissioner, has already locked in their next TV deal. They've basically said to Oklahoma and Texas, we don't care how valuable you are. We're moving on without you. Get out. And also, we know, and we talked about this on the show a few months back, they're very actively pursuing Gonzaga as a basketball-only member. Well, in pursuit of that aggression, they're also very actively pursuing some schools in the Pac-12. Most notably, they are pursuing the four, what they call the corner schools: Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah. They're trying to sell them, hey, we know what our contract is. We know what it's worth. And I'm not sure that those schools are listening yet, but I think they're going to have to start. Oregon and Washington could be appealing as well. And so all of this is the back channel of what you need to know. Don't get caught up in the SMU headline, because what's much more interesting is if the Pac-12 is going to get a deal done that keeps their schools happy and keeps these schools together. Now, if you ask my personal opinion, I will be consistent with what I've said from the beginning. I believe that the 10 remaining schools want to stay together. They don't want to be part of some Midwest conglomerate with Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Baylor, whatever. But at some point, they're going to run out of options and say, we need to start seriously considering it. And I do wonder, If it only takes one school to say, you know what, we can't wait any longer, we're making the plunge. Would it be Utah? Would Oregon and Washington, who seem to be tied at the hip? Arizona and Arizona State seem to be tied at the hip. And some recent reporting, I think it was Jason Shear, my buddy that covers Arizona, says that for the first time, Arizona State's seriously considering this. And so I bring it up to very simply say this. I think if I had to bet anything, it's that the Pac-12 does stick together, probably adds those two schools, SMU and San Diego State, and that they get some sort of TV deal done with a streaming service with ESPN for a select few games for that 10:30 Eastern window. But I think it's far from done. And beyond being far from done, the Pac-12 has to move quickly. The Pac-12, I believe, has until basically probably the end of basketball season, like mid-April, late April, to present something tangible to its schools before they start looking around. I don't think you want to enter the summer when all the chaos of realignment happens without having figured out what your TV deal is. So again, if I had to bet, I think that they're staying together, but the commissioner of the Pac-12, George Kliavkoff, he needs to get his teams, his 10 schools. Where are we being distributed? How much are you getting paid? How long is the contract? They need those answers now. And if I was if I was the consultant of the Pac-12 conference, one, I would have made a lot of changes at this point. But get that deal done ASAP. Because if you don't, your school's going to start looking around. Forget the SMU headline. That doesn't matter. SMU can get out of anything if there's no conference. Pac-12's got to get a deal done. They got to get it done right now.